Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning into Molly's Salon. And this is our weekly program every Thursday evening where I interview innovative thinkers and creative firebrands. These firebrands are a variety of artists and leaders discussing new ideas, how they're coping with the coronavirus, and glimmers of hope for the future. Tonight's guests, and you are in for a real treat tonight, are author, journalist, and playwright Lawrence Wright, actress and director Phylicia Rashad, and president and CEO of Americans for the Arts, Robert Lynch. Larry Wright is a Pulitzer Prize-winning author, screenwriter, playwright, and a staff writer for the New Yorker magazine. Excuse me, where he has published a number of prize-winning articles, including 2 National Magazine Awards. He's the author of 10 nonfiction books, including Going Clear, Scientology, Hollywood, and the Prison and Belief, and The Looming Tower, Al-Qaeda and the Road to 9/11. 2 novels, 2 films, 2 one-person plays, and 5 full-stage plays, including Camp David about the Carter, Begin, and Sadat Summit, and Cleo about the making of the movie Cleopatra. Hi, Larry.
Hi, Molly.
And Larry and I got to know each other through the development of the play Camp David, which premiered at Arena Stage. You have a lot of fans out here tonight, Larry, people who are watching you from Arena. I just see Seema just wrote, I loved Camp David. I just have a question for you. How would the world be different right now if Carter were president today?
Oh, if he were president, for one thing, it would be a compassionate government. He was he was mad about government efficiencies. He was a micromanager, and there would be that. But at least it would be managed. Human rights would be at the top of the scale, and there would be an effort to reach out to other countries and tighten our alliances. Jimmy Carter did not get us into a war. He was a president who had bad luck, but I think he was probably the closest to a political saint that we've ever had in that office.
I think that's really true. Larry, you just finished a novel, The End of October, which was published in April, and it concerns a doctor investigating a new disease poised to spread around the world. So do you feel prescient? And what prompted you to write this thrilling novel?
I've been getting that a lot, Molly. It wasn't prescience exactly. It was research. It began a decade ago when the filmmaker Ridley Scott asked me to write a screenplay about, he read the Cormac McCarthy novel, The Road, which is this post-apocalyptic scene of a father and son wandering through the ruins of civilization. And Ridley wanted me to answer the question, what happened? Because Cormac doesn't bother to tell us how civilization came to an end. I thought it was an interesting question. And I thought, nuclear war, but really what struck me as most interesting is a pandemic, because it would be set in the world of public health. And, like with nuclear war, it's difficult to find a hero, but in public health, it's just heroes everywhere you look. I spent a lot of time as a young reporter writing about disease outbreaks and working with the Center for Disease Control. And I just thought those people were noble in a way. And so that's where the inspiration came from. It's a total coincidence that it happens to be published in the middle of a pandemic.
Well, Larry, you just talked about heroes. Who are the people who are heroes for you today in public health?
Well, I think everybody loves Dr. Fauci, and he's been a wonderful spokesperson. But the people that helped me with my novel, some of them are on the leading edge right now of developing the vaccine. And Molly, I can tell you from knowing these people and spending a lot of time in their company, we're in good hands. I feel very encouraged. Dr. Barney Graham at the National Institute of Allergies and Infectious Diseases oversaw the first vaccine in the U.S. to go into human trials. It's now in the second stage and is reporting very good progress. And Philip Dormitzer at Pfizer was a chief scientist, and they've just had a very successful test in their first phase. I think we're going to get a vaccine. And it's people like that who are ingenious and they're really puzzle solvers. And in the novel, I would write myself into a corner because I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. And I'd create a scenario, and then I would call one of them up and say, "Here's the problem," and they would help me find a solution. And so I sound a lot smarter in the novel than I actually am.
You backed yourself into a corner and then you called them and said, "Help me fight my way out."
Yeah, what's the game show where you get to call somebody? Well, that was like, but in this case, I would create my own problem.
Okay, so Larry, you've written this book and you live in Texas, you live in Austin, and why is it so crazy right now in Texas in terms of the virus? What's going on there?
Cultural denial. It's not as if we weren't warned. There was China, there was Italy, there was New York. What were we thinking? And the governor, when he started to open up, he surrounded himself with a bunch of medical experts. And I thought, well, maybe this will be a responsible opening. But once the door cracked open, it flew open. And as soon as he opened the bars, I knew that we were in real trouble. And now we're an epicenter. But I think before COVID gets me, I'll probably die of indignation. It's insupportable, honestly. So our lieutenant governor yesterday, just as we were having 8,000 new cases, he said, "Dr. Fauci doesn't know what he's talking about." And this is the same guy that suggested that old people ought to go ahead and die. I think he might show us some leadership in that department.
So I'm curious because you're such an incredible reporter. When was the moment when you knew and understood that this virus was going to take the world over? Or when was the first moment of fear for you as a reporter?
First time we heard about it was on New Year's Eve, when the word leaked out of China that there was a new virus. And it made me think of SARS. SARS, far more mortal virus, but a cousin of the COVID-19. And SARS killed about 11% of the people that infected, much more than what we're dealing with. But the Chinese covered it up. And it was almost a miracle that public health officials and just luck was able to corral that virus after 150 days. And it already gotten into 37 countries. But it could have taken over the world as we are dealing with now. And so I immediately thought we might be in trouble. And within a few weeks, it was clear that, by the time it got to Thailand, I think was the first place out of China, it was clear that it doesn't respect boundaries. And once it's out of the bag, it's going to travel the world.
Well, in the middle of all of this, Larry, where are you finding moments of joy?
I love playing music, and I still take now a virtual piano lesson every Sunday. I'm in a band, although when that'll happen again, I don't know, or even whether the bars will still be there, when the clouds clear. Fortunately, my daughter and her husband live in Austin, and they're the only people we see, and vice versa. And she's pregnant, and so we have a couple of times a week we have dinner. We've had friends over for social distance on the patio, cocktails. So there's that. But I miss my friends. I miss the company. I miss traveling. There's a ton of things, but on the other hand, I feel so blessed to be in a family that I adore and in a city that, I have got a lot of friends in, and, so I'm lucky that way, but I am ready for this to be over.
Me too. I mean, it's great to see you, Larry, and great to hear from you. And thank you so much for coming on the show. And I can't wait to see you in the flesh.
Me too, Molly. We'll wait for that occasion.
All right. Thank you. While some may know Felicia best from her television and film work, she started her career on stage, notably in Dreamgirls with one of my best friends, Charles Randolph Wright, and her many theater credits include August Osage County, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, Gem of the Ocean, and Raisin in the Sun, for which she won the Drama Desk Award and Tony Award for Best Actress in a Play. We've been lucky at Arena Stage to have Felicia in Blues for an Alabama Sky, Blue, Every Tongue Confess. She expanded to directing as well and also teaches master classes. Boy, aren't those people lucky. She's an alum of Howard University here in Washington, D.C. It's so great to see you, Felicia.
Thank you, Molly. It's good to see you too.
Well, I'm really curious because you are one of the best actors, period. Your ability to move into subtlety in character and the kind of fire that comes out of you is extraordinary. I love watching your thought process on stage. And you were in Blue playing the lead, the play by Charles Randolph Wright, and that was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And you are now going to be directing the play.
Yes.
Once theaters start opening up. And I think it'll be at the Apollo, right?
That's right.
And I'm just curious, what's the different mindset for you in making that kind of change? And also, this role so much from the inside out, and suddenly you're directing the whole project.
Well, all right. So I was very privileged to work with Al Freeman Jr. when he was at Howard University. He invited me to teach a semester of master classes. And I would sit in on his class. And it's really interesting to hear different actors, directors, and instructors define what acting is. And his definition was, acting is the movement of thought.
Mm.
Well, now, when you really think about that,
Mm.
that's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot. He would say that, and then he would tell his students, move to the center of thought and put yourself in the way of the experience.
Oof.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's how I approach work as an actor, and that's how I approach work as a director. I'm very interested in what I call connective tissue, that which is not on the page, but that supports it, and that's honest, and that's true. So I'm interested in understanding what happened 15 minutes to 15 years before this scene takes place. Because that informs the character, that informs the human being, that informs the truth of human behavior. That's how I do it. That's how I work.
I love that. I love that. That's really beautiful. Well, ladies and gentlemen that are listening, we just got a lesson in acting and directing. And two that I'm going to be chewing on. So I'm curious in this moment,
Mm-hmm.
looking at either plays or even roles that you would be interested in tackling. Is there anything that's coming up in your dream time Is there anything that is flashing in front of your mind as far as, boy, that would be absolutely right for this moment?
There is a screenplay that Charles Randolph Wright has written. That's very interesting to me. It's called No Wave Without Wind. That's very interesting to me. It's a story we don't see often, you know, a love story we don't see. But sometimes I think, what would it be like to revisit Medea? What would that be like? Yeah. And that thought excites me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is a time for the Greeks because it's God and man and nature and everything colliding all at once. I think it would be, boy, you as Medea. Yeah, that's a great one to revisit. I love that.
Yeah.
So Washington, D.C., because you're so familiar with it, it's been a huge part of your history. It's a city on edge, especially right now, with this presidency, with D.C. statehood, with all of the protests in the street. And I'm so proud of our young people here, Felicia. There are thousands in the street still every day. They are still marching.
We don't hear
They are
that.
still down at the White House. They are still gathering. And I'm really curious to hear from you about how you feel about DC statehood.
Mm-hmm. I think DC should have statehood. It doesn't make sense. That goes back to the beginning of the American Revolution. What was it? Taxation without representation?
You got it.
It's not right. It's not right. That seems to me like a no-brainer.
I know. Well, it finally went through the House of Representatives the other day. It'll never get through the Senate, but once we have a new president, I'm very hopeful that we will end up being the 51st state.
We just have to get through this right now.
We do.
We have to get through this right now. And we have to be determined to live. And we have to be determined to work together. And we have to be determined also to include people who misunderstand themselves to be different from others and not a part of one humanity. We have to find ways to listen, to let them know they've been heard. For real, you know, for real. And in this way, this is what I love about theater, to help them find the commonality, help them find what's the likenesses, you know, the likenesses. Because we are much more alike than we could ever be different. I think those false notions of separation and difference create walls. Walls. Yes, walls. High and thick. But they're not totally insurmountable. We have to find the way to disassemble that. We have to get through that faulty thought process, because I don't believe people are born thinking that way. I think this is learned. You know, it's learned. And it's a problem that plagues humanity all over the world. You see it in every culture. It isn't particular to us alone. It isn't specific to us alone in this nation. Yeah, we've got to get through this. I was most encouraged, I have to say, to see people from all over the world come out into the streets and stand for human decency together without a leader. There wasn't anybody leading anything. It just happened. I mean, whoa, we can say in our lifetime, we have seen this. We know the deal. We saw it, and the world saw it too. I was very encouraged by it.
It was thrilling. It was truly thrilling. And critical turning point, real turning point. We're in the middle of a critical turning point in all areas. And I don't think that the protests would have happened at this level after the murder of George Floyd if it wasn't the pandemic and this presidency. I mean, I feel like everything came together to drive everything forward for the people to say no more. No more police brutality on Black bodies. Let's change institutions. Let's recognize racism in a different way. So it's a thrilling time. I could talk to you all night, Felicia, but I'm going to have to say goodbye. But thank you so much for coming on and giving us all your wisdom.
Thank you for having me, Molly. Thank you.
Great to see you. Bob Lynch is president and CEO of Americans for the Arts with more than 45 years of experience in the arts industry. He remains motivated to empower communities and leaders to advance the arts in society and in the lives of citizens. Under his leadership, the services and membership of American for the Arts has grown to more than 50 times their original size, and the organization has become a leader in documenting and articulating the key community development role played by nonprofit arts and culture industry and its audiences in strengthening our nation's economy. He enjoys playing the piano, the mandolin, and the guitar. So amazing, Bob. And when did you learn to play the piano, the mandolin, and the guitar? Or was this something from childhood?
Well, first of all, great to be here with you. Thank you so much for the invitation. And it doesn't say in that paragraph that I'm good at any of those things. But I learned to love them and to play in bands and rock and roll bands and folk bands and Irish bands, starting pretty much in high school. I had a couple of years of piano lessons when I was in the 6th and 7th grade, and then, learned it those were the days when you would form a band and then buy the instruments and then learn how to play because you wanted to be part of what was going on in the late 60s and early 70s. So I still try to do a piano song and a guitar song every night, and for relaxation and jam sessions as much as I can.
Oh, I love that. And Bob, you and I both went to parochial schools.
Yes, we did.
And for many, 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 many years. And I'm really curious about what lessons from parochial schools you're taking in to our lives these days.
Well, I went to 8 years grammar school with Sisters of St. Joseph, and then 4 years high school with the Jesuits. And I got very different lessons from both of those. In grammar school, I had the single best teacher that I've ever had through college or whatever in the 8th grade. Now, some I wouldn't put in that category, but Sister Mary Andrina was the kind of teacher that every kid needs, who finds a different strength in every student and helps nurture it. And for me, she helped me discover writing as an interest. And I went on to be interested in poetry. I was a poetry essentially major in college. And that was the influence that you could do anything you wanted. Another kid she found was passionate about wood, and he became a cabinet maker and so on. In high school, it was a different situation. It was very, very classical, classical training oriented, 2 periods of Latin a day, which I didn't like very much. But the theme, basically the motto of the high school and all Jesuit schools is men or women or people for others. So what I learned there is the the point of embracing service as a pathway, career, so on. So you put those two things together and you become an arts advocate, arts administrator.
And now that you have, I mean, you've done such incredible work. And it's such a hard time for arts organizations without the ability to gather people in a safe and healthy way. And you've advocated for emergency funding. How is the organization mobilized to act? How do you fire up the people that are in your fold?
So I got there 35 years ago to head up the organization. We had 4 staff. We have 65 staff today. And one of the wings of the organization, there's an advocacy wing with professional advocates, and there's a research wing. There's a marketing visibility wing. There's a professional training wing. And good people who have stayed with me for a long, long time. I've got half a dozen people that have been there for, 25 years. But we were forged in fire because the arts have been under attack, essentially, in America since the beginning. I always like to say that the country had it together back in 1491, pre-Columbus, when the Native American populations had art infused into every aspect of life. Art was part of cooking and ritual and dress, everything. In fact, many Native American tribes have no word for art because it's so much a part of everything. But the people who came fleeing religious persecution or just trying to get away were survival, essentially. Whether they were slaves or indentured servants or anybody who came from persecution were focused on survival. And it took a long time for art to be a central part. Theater was banned many times in the 1600s and the 1700s, but it kept fighting back and sneaking back. So our organization, before I got there, was formed in 1960, right at the beginning of its work, which was basically about local art advancement. Those local groups came together and fought to create the National Endowment for the Arts in 1965. Our organization led that effort. And there was a lot of opposition. And then over the years, there were many attempts to get rid of that. The Reagan administration, for example, Newt Gingrich and Jesse Helms, and that time period when we were dealing with the Mapplethorpe and Serrano pornography, art is blasphemy. And so all of that is when we started to forge a much more advocacy-oriented approach. And so the staff, which set in the middle of March and equipped technologically, were prepared to jump in because of that training and just everything electronically, the research and the advocacy. And it's been a very, very successful effort in the midst of chaos.
It's great. It's great. I was shocked when I read your numbers in the New York Times that 95% of artists have lost work. 62% have become fully unemployed. And of course, as a theater artist, I feel that keenly. We started the artist marketplace through Arena with Sima Sueco. It gives artists an opportunity to sell items or experiences online. We thought it was a great way to connect artists and audience. What other ways, because I think we only have a couple minutes left, but I'd love for you to dive into what other ways can people or organizations support artists right now?
Well, one of the things I think that we're looking at is basically for the arts, the reinvention of marketing. We are going to have to completely reinvent all of the elements of what the marketing mix is. What are the products that we have to deliver? So much is virtual right now. And one of the joys for me in terms of art is grazing all of the virtual offerings that people are doing, whether it's, Juilliard did a spectacular with all of their students and faculty Bolero, and the Paris Opera Ballet, all the dancers dancing from their kitchens and their bedrooms. And I don't know if you saw that there's in Spain, the Barcelona Opera that opened with a string quartet, they reopened their 2,000 space facility, and they filled all the seats with plants. The whole thing is filled with plants. These things are very creative and they're very beautiful. One of our board members, Brian Stokes Mitchell, he got the COVID-19, and he basically performed out his balcony every night as a way to fight it and to celebrate the health workers. So, there's many, many other things that are going to evolve, but looking at the products, looking at the vehicles of communication of the art, pricing, everything. So we're collecting stories from all across the country, like the ones I just said, and other kinds of mechanisms. The arts and arts management and local arts entities are resilient. They will reinvent, and they will, and people want it. That's the great thing that we've discovered going through all of the trials by fire, is that we are able to mobilize people to come and ask for it. People don't necessarily know that in the last 3 years, the administration has zeroed out federal funding for the arts. All the cultural agencies, $1 billion worth of funding every year in a row. And yet we've been able to mobilize our Action Fund membership of 400,000 people and others, and not only get the programs to stay, but get extra money. And that's because we've got great friends that we've built in Congress, but it's also because of people action. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what evolves out of all of this. However, we think some 12,000 arts organizations will go out of business, that according to the research we've done on organizations. And the artist study that you referenced, which we're doing in collaboration with the organization Artist Relief, which came together to give grants to artists, that study shows about $50 billion worth of artist dollar losses. So we're trying to address it.
Well, thank you, Bob, and thank you for all your great work. I'm really sorry that we have to close now. I think we're going to have our other two guests back on for just a moment to say goodbye. But keep up everything that you're doing, Bob, because it's good. It's really, really strong work. And thank you for this mighty fortress of three amazing guests. Thank you all so much for coming on and telling your stories and giving us some hope for the future. You each did that tonight. So thank you. And let's go. Life is good.
Thanks, Molly.
Thank you, Molly.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
My guests next week are actress and singer Ife Butler, playwright and novelist Teresa Rebeck, and director Timothy Douglas. And tonight we'll be showing the sizzle reel for Inside Voices, a film by Arena Stage's Voices of Now ensemble. We're going to have a watch party. And a watch party is really, really fun. As you watch, you're able to send messages and do little hearts. I love those little hearts and little thumbs up. Log on to arenastage.org and find out all about it. All right, take care, everybody.
When I was 15, the world fell apart.
Grown-ups aren't sure how much information is safe to share with young people.
I thought people were overreacting.
I heard it was just like the flu.
Schools will be closed for the rest of the year.
First online classes today.
Quarantine looks like living life with a different set of rules in order to keep us safe.
It actually made me wonder about how much do we need? How more attuned can we be to the world around us?